Good evening and welcome to Sports Overtime. We are here in our digital studio. You can watch Southeast Sports Plus Monday to Friday, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We spent this past week previewing a lot of great games in and around college football and basketball with our friends from Nexstar Nation. Here's the best of. And some really interesting ones as it relates to Illinois because they crossed with Tennessee in multiple sports in a really short window of time. Let's first of all start off with football here in the Music City Bowl because it is a trip to Nashville, so it's a trip on Tennessee's home turf, so to speak. What are some of the ways that the Illinois Fighting Illini are gearing up for this matchup as they go to Tennessee in a quote-unquote neutral site game?
Yeah, Illinois is kind of an older team. They brought back, I think it was 16 or 18. I believe it was 18 starters from their bowl game last year. They beat South Carolina in that bowl game last year and brought just about everybody back. They lost one really, really good wide receiver who's now with the Denver Broncos, and that was their biggest loss. But they brought a ton of guys back, and I think most of those guys are going to play in this bowl game. Not all of them. They have had two significant opt-outs for the NFL draft. That would be Gabe Akis. He's an edge rusher or an outside linebacker who leads the Big Ten in sacks. And then they had an offensive lineman, one of their best offensive linemen, one of their tackles opt out for the draft as well. So those two spots will be the two they have to fill, but they got a lot of guys back from last year, a lot of guys who have played a lot of football, and a lot of guys who kind of, I think, have been a big part of this turnaround of Illinois football to where there was fans this year at Illinois that were kind of bummed they weren't in the playoff. It used to be like, oh my gosh, you won 6 wins. Way to go, guys, you know? So these guys have been a big part in taking Illinois football from a place where 6 wins used to be, let's give them all a medal of honor, and now they won, 8, and people were a little bit upset about it. So this is a senior class that's historic, and I think kind of wants to go out on a high note just because they've done a lot for Illinois football.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like this turnaround for Illinois football really started in what is now referred to as the longest game in college football history, going back to Penn State. I was in attendance, so I can say that. Wow. It was cold, it was rainy, and it was just nothing but football weather. But when you look at this year's team, it's hard to look past quarterback Luke Altmaier, and we've been able to follow Tennessee throughout this entire year. The defense hasn't been great. What do you expect to see from him in this bowl game?
Yeah, Illinois, probably a similar spot. You could say the defense hasn't been great, but the offense has been pretty good. Not always perfect, but pretty good. Altmaier came back for his 3rd year at Illinois. This matchup is unique because actually Luke, I told Tennessee, he keeps having these crossover episodes with Tennessee. It was actually when Illinois played Tennessee in basketball last year that Luke, during that game, announced on the court, on the microphone at the basketball game, I'm coming back for 1 more year. And then later that offseason, Luke had to kind of make a second, hey, I'm actually still coming back announcement because there were so many heavy rumors that actually Tennessee was recruiting him and trying to get him in the transfer portal. And when he finally kind of shut the door on that possibility, he made another I'm coming back announcement, and now he's playing Tennessee in the bowl game. So just very interesting. He's got plenty of interaction with Vol fans, I guess you could say at this point, but he's been consistent. Luke came to Illinois from Ole Miss, so he has some SEC experience. He's from Starkville, Mississippi, so he grew up in SEC country. He got to Illinois, and his first year in 23 was just okay. Illinois missed a bowl game that year, and it wasn't great. And then 24 was kind of a prove-it year of like, okay, what can this guy do for us? Is he the guy? And he was terrific last year, and he's really built off that this year.
Some huge news out today. Steve Sarkisian and company looking to bolster up that coaching staff. And I'll tell you what, bringing in a former SEC head coach, a longtime defensive coordinator, he has ties to Nick Saban and others. Tell us about the big news there in the Lone Star State.
Yeah, this one caught everyone off guard, and that's saying something in 2025 when there was no hints of this. But Will Muschamp, new defensive coordinator. Pete Kwiatkowski out at Texas after 5 years. He came with Sark. He was at Washington, and Muschamp, who was at Texas from 2008 to 2010, when he dropped a bomb when he went to Florida as the head coach at the end of the season. That 2010 season was a losing season for Texas, and Muschamp had been named the head coach in waiting for Mack Brown
the
previous year, and he was set to take over when Mack Brown was going to retire, but instead he got that Florida opportunity. He's been out of coaching for a year. He's very close with Kirby Smart. He spent time on that Georgia staff after he was let go at South Carolina. He went from Florida to South Carolina as head coach, and Muschamp coming back to Texas, where he was wildly popular. Now, he was here in a great time, 2008 season, where they were a Michael Crabtree play away from potentially playing for a national title. 2009 season, obviously played for a national title. And then the year after Colt McCoy left, things went south on Texas, and Muschamp got that opportunity to go to Florida. But, yeah, this one catching everybody by surprise today because the defense has been kind of where Texas has leaned the last couple of years under Pete Kwiatkowski. This year, a few more cracks, especially in the second half of the season. But clearly there's more to this than, what we know on the surface. And Sark and Muschamp don't have a lot of ties together. Muschamp has some ties to Nick Saban, so there's but doesn't everybody, right?
Yeah.
So, and Muschamp and Kirby Smart are good friends as well. So this was interesting, and also the other part of it is Dwayne Aquina has been let go. He came for 1 year as the safeties coach. Back to Texas. He was on the staff with Muschamp here as well, so looking to fill that slot. But the big news, obviously, Pete Kwiatkowski out as defensive coordinator, Will Muschamp in as defensive coordinator as Texas gets ready to play a bowl game next week that now everybody's forgotten about against Michigan with this news today.
We've talked a lot of Missouri here on this show, and now as we get ready for this game, what are some of the big things about Virginia from this season and the way they play towards the end of the year that you're really looking forward to as they close out the year in the Gator Bowl?
Yeah, it's just been a year to remember for UVA. I mean, you think of the past 3 seasons under Tony Elliott, and it's been ugly at times. Of course, they had the tragedy a few years back that kind of set them back when Tony Elliott kind of first got on campus. And then, they were picked to finish 14th in the preseasons at ACC Media Days. And there wasn't a whole lot of, positive outlook. The one positive going into the season when we were looking at things was, how manageable the schedule was, that if UVA put out a competitive team, then we thought there was a possibility that Virginia was going to be able to maybe make a bowl game for the first time since 2019. And then they surprised us all by winning a couple of games that, folks never thought they would. They beat Florida State when they were ranked 9th, and at the time that was a huge win. Looking back now, maybe it doesn't mean as much because of the fall off that Florida State had, but at the time it was kind of the turning point where the fans even around Charlottesville and Richmond started to buy into the team, and as the season progressed, you saw that in the stands and the energy around the stadium, and what Virginia did really well was just finding a way to win games. It wasn't always pretty. They have 3 overtime wins. Their win against Washington State came with a safety with under 2 minutes to play, so essentially another overtime game for them. So they just kind of found ways to get wins on what was a manageable schedule. And obviously, I think the ACC would have liked if Virginia had won the ACC championship so they could have them in the mix instead of Duke. But it wasn't all that surprising that Virginia lost to Duke because they haven't been that dominant team, but they found ways to win games.
Oxford is projected to make like $74 million in revenue just by hosting this game alone. So I want to get your opinion. Do you think we should get more of these college football playoff games on campus because of these numbers?
Absolutely. This is the biggest game in the state in history of Mississippi. This is a place that breeds so much talent. They don't have a professional any type of team, right? That's on a national spotlight. So for this to generate that type of revenue and buzz around a small knit community that if you go there in June, you'll wonder, wow, where are all the students? Where are all the people? Because it's that old school hometown type of feel. It almost feels like it's a storybook, right? And being there and being a graduate from there, this type of momentum is great for, I think, small colleges and revenue when it comes to why we miss the pageantry of college football.
Yeah.
You don't have the same when it comes to NIL, and obviously with the SEC adding different teams and elements, and it doesn't matter, this player is going to be here next year. It's kind of hard to rally behind certain programs. But when you go back and you look at the fine print of these small town places, these communities like Athens, and I also want to say that I think that Pete, he kind of reminds me of a Kirby. He reminds me of someone that's home. He reminds me of someone that's not going to change himself or anything, and he reminds me of with somebody, and I've heard he can fire up the guys. I don't know if you guys saw the video when he was announced that same Sunday evening on November 30th that he was going to be the head coach. Those players, they were excited that Pete was going to be the guy running them out the tunnel. And to his point, it doesn't matter who's going to run them out the tunnel tomorrow. It's all about the 11 on the field that's going to take care of business to keep them going, hopefully down to New Orleans and compete for a Sugar Bowl.
Stay with us here on Sports Overtime. And remember, you can watch our show, Southeast Sports Plus, from 2 to 4 o'clock on the free WKRG Plus app. You can find us on your Roku, Fire TV, or Apple TV device.
How do you think Clark Lee feels about this? Because I mean, he made the trip to New York. He said all the right things about Diego Pavia, and now, as you mentioned, he's going to be remembered for all the wrong reasons. And I just feel like his coach is the exact opposite of what Diego Pavia is.
Well, that's not all Diego Pavia is, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. There's a lot more to Diego Pavia than that. I had some guy on Twitter telling me, saying every bad word he could about Pavia, and then telling me what a Saint Mendoza is, and I'm like, well, that's great. But we were with Diego on Wednesday when he was buying Christmas gifts for Special Olympians out of his own pocket. I mean, he's does he have an edge to him? Absolutely.
Sure.
Do he and his brothers look like a bunch of mafia hitmen sometimes? Absolutely. But you know what? That's what they are.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Just because they look different from you and it might scare you, that's okay. Now, when you behave like that afterwards, that's not okay.
Right.
That's not okay. But he was being criticized before he ever got there.
For sure.
This was before any of this happened. And so, I guess this is my deeper way of saying Clark, I'm sure, because I don't want to speak for him, is disappointed. Just like everybody, I'm sure, in the Vanderbilt community is. But he also knows Diego way better than any of us.
No question. No
way
question.
Better.
Yeah.
I mean, he knows all the ins and outs and what makes him tick and, and all that. And so, I'm sure, like a parent, you'd be disappointed, right? But you don't disown your kids because they make a mistake.
Right.
You just don't. And so I think it's probably more along those lines.
Yeah. As you take a look at that Mendoza and Pavia, and now that the hay's in the barn, so to speak, with these two players overall, I know the way that you voted is the same way that I did, but how do you think that Fernando Mendoza will be remembered? Because it's I mean, this is the first time ever, it feels like we're living in the upside down in Stranger Things, that you have an Indiana quarterback and a Vanderbilt quarterback as the best two in America.
It's crazy.
I know.
It really is crazy. It really is crazy. So much of these Heisman winners are remembered by what they become as pros, which isn't right.
Yeah,
it's got nothing to do with anything. But it's always like, we don't remember Johnny Manziel for being an electric college football player. We remember him for being a bozo in the NFL and screwing everything up. We still remember Tim Tebow as a great college football player.
Right.
But we also remember him as a disastrous NFL.
Yeah.
All right. And so there's some of that goes with that. But I think when I look at Mendoza and I say what's going to determine this year for him, I need to see what he does in the playoffs. If he leads Indiana to the championship game, then he will truly have a great legacy.
Right.
If they go 1-out in the playoffs, he'll be known as a guy who led them to an undefeated finish in the Big Ten and winning the championship, and he had a great year. But if he can take them to the championship game of this playoffs, I think it could take his legacy to another level. And then whatever he does from the NFL, from there, has to be seen.
It is a really intriguing matchup for a couple reasons. Offensively, both offenses really evenly matched, but defensively, who's gonna step up in that 11 a.m. kick I mean, it's hard to believe that no team's going to wake up for that game. Like you said, this is probably the biggest game that's ever been played in the maroon and white. So I think the Aggies are certainly going to have a chip on their shoulder welcoming Miami into Kyle Field.
Parker, I feel like when you take a look at what the media's perspective on this game is, it seems like a lot of people are like, Miami's going to pull off the upset. Texas A&M has never really been in this situation before. But when I see Mike Elko, I see a guy that's just cool, calm, and collected and ready for this situation. How do you think he is handling this situation? Because, there's never been more eyes on this program in recent memory than right now.
Cool, calm, and collected unless reporters are disturbing the post-game press conference after the Lone Star Showdown.
And leaving the door open.
Yeah. Other than that, I'd say he's cool as a cucumber. But I think that he's walking into this matchup with the utmost confidence that they can get it done, because this looks like the best Texas A&M football team that we've ever seen. And I think the offense has a lot to do with it. The offense is what's helped the Aggies really, for the past 2 seasons, really dominate this stretch of football. And it's just a matter of whether they can play complementary football, because I think a lot of people don't realize how good this Aggies defense has been for the most part this season. And it may have started a little shaky at the beginning of the season, but they've been lights out primarily for the entire stretch to close the regular season. So I think if they can just control what they can control, this Aggies team should be favored in this one, but obviously never being in this moment, a lot of people still have their concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of those concerns are embedded in different places. One of those games obviously being the South Carolina game. And I know a lot of people have put that game to bed just because of the comeback and Texas A&M showed that resilience. But this is a Miami offense that comes in with a quarterback that has played at a major program. He played there at Georgia before in Carson Beck, and now leading this team against this Texas A&M defense. What do you think the A&M defense will need to do to be able to slow down this Miami O?
Yeah, I think they've played some experienced quarterbacks this season, and whether the records of the teams that they played indicate how good the teams that they played were. Lenore Sellers, Garrett Nussmeier. Now they're playing Carson Beck. They played Jackson Arnold, who's had a lot of sort of that could be a dual threat quarterback. And I think that prepares them for this situation, getting to play against another quarterback that should be in the upper tier of quarterbacks in collegiate football. And that's really, I think, the biggest key to Texas A&M's defense is, can they slow him down? And once they do that, if they can make him one-dimensional, I don't think this really is going to be that close of a game.
Stay with us here on Sports Overtime. And remember, you can watch our show, Southeast Sports Plus, from 2 to 4 o'clock on the free WKRG Plus app. You can find us on your Roku, Fire TV, or Apple TV device. Scott, something that I know that you've heard and seen, I've heard and seen over the last almost month or so, ever since this Penn State job opened up. For some reason, Kalen DeBoer's name will not leave the headlines from talking heads on national, in TV, whether it's in print, in our space. Do you believe any of this noise now that Michigan continues to be in the headlines? I think I saw it on PTI the other day that they were talking about it. And what is your overall take of where Coach Kalen DeBoer is heading into this matchup?
I think if he wins, it's a moot point. I think if he loses, I think it's, I don't know if it's 50-50, but it might be 35-65, 40-60 that he'll listen. And when they say they're not talking to other teams, well, of course they're not. Their agents are. Their representatives are. Obviously, any coach is going to listen to somebody that makes an offer. And if he loses, I would bet Michigan contacts their representatives and sees what's going on with that. This is a huge game, for far bigger ramifications in advancing in the college football playoffs. It's big for Venables to further what he's doing after a tough year or so, and then doing well this year. Huge for DeBoer because, you know, he kind of ended the season on a down note again. He's 4-4 after November 1st in 2 years at Alabama, almost 3-5. So he needs some big wins here late in the year, and then now this Michigan thing hanging over him. So this game's got some important things dangling from it, you know?
That's our show tonight. Remember, you can watch Southeast Sports Plus Monday to Friday from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock on the free WKRG Plus app. Catch us on your Roku, Fire TV, or Apple TV device. Good night.